This episode of Going in Raw is sponsored by Aura Frames. From big events to life's everyday moments, Aura Frames makes it easy to upload unlimited photos directly from your phone so your favorite memories are always within view.
Named the #1 digital photo frame by Wirecutter, Aura Frames can be preloaded and personalized to make a truly unforgettable gift this holiday season.
So save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $35 off Aura's best-selling Carver matte frames by using promo code RAW at checkout. That's AURAFrames.com, promo code RAW. This deal is exclusive to listeners, so get yours now in time for the holidays. Terms and conditions apply. Hey, Friendo, Steve here.
And Larson.
And welcome back to Going in Raw, the only pro wrestling podcast you need to be listening to. It's Hot Takes Wednesday. We're taking your hot takes that we post on our community thread, and we're going to read a bunch of them and react to them and talk about them and discuss them. And make sure that you're subbed to the channel. You hit that notify bell so that if you want your hot take read on the show, it's a possibility, but you won't get it on there if you don't put it on there, if you don't write it on the community thread, Larson.
If you don't put it there, we can't read it.
We will have no idea that it's even there.
It's that simple.
Anyways, what's our first hot take today?
Well, you know, the New Day segment on Raw this week's Talk of the Wrestling World now.
Certainly is.
So we're going to kick off with 3 hot takes about the New Day. Hot take from Choweezy says, without having any physicality, the New Day celebration might have just topped the Festival of Friendship in the best team breakup segment.
I'm assuming we have not talked about this at all. Are we going to do most heartbreaking or best group breakup segments or something like that?
So I was looking into that. And last year we did an episode of Countdown on Betrayals.
Oh, yeah.
And there'd be a lot of crossover.
Okay.
So I was trying to think of another angle to take.
Yeah. Well, we'll definitely do something
heartbreaking segments or something like that. We'll
see. All right. So let's talk about the Festival of Friendship. Of course, this was a wonderfully orchestrated moment where Kevin Owens turned heel on Chris Jericho by having his own list, because Chris Jericho had his shit list, basically. And he would put people on it.
Oh, you have a pen. I don't have a pen.
I have a pen. And so, yeah. And it was a very clever comedic bit that he would do. It was pretty funny stuff. And the chemistry between Owens and Jericho was so wonderful. And then they did the Festival of Friendship, and history was made. The thing that I think there are several things for me personally that lends me to agree with this hot take that in my estimation makes it a cold take, but I'm sure there's plenty out there who might disagree, is for several reasons. Number one, I think sort of beat for beat, it was at the very least, it matched in execution the Festival of Friendship. But when you add in several things, number one, the extensive history of the New Day, and why you would think the WWE would probably be hesitant to do something this dramatic after 10 years of massive success with the New Day, as you know, for much of that time being really over baby faces, for how loved Big E is, for the very real world situation with which Big E, has had his career, shift for him. All the history there, the performance itself. I mean, time will tell, but in terms of those big moments, this to me of its kind, it's hard to top this. It really is. This might be, again, you need some history, you need some time, but boy, I don't think it's going to be, I think this is going to be hard to top.
It is. There's another thing that the New Day segment has going for it, that Festival of Friendship. Well, you mentioned the length of time. What, Jericho and Owens were a team for months as opposed to years?
Yeah, I don't think it was even a year.
No, I don't think it was even a year either. Another thing that added, so going into this, I think the expectation was, as surprising as it still would have been, was for Kofi and Xavier Woods to just split up. But, throughout the duration of New Day's tenure at WWE, they've been adamant. They didn't want to split. They did not want to go, do the old tropes of a faction gains success, someone turns on the other members, split happens, they all feud. They seem adamant. They did not want to do that.
Sure.
And that was in the back of my mind during that whole thing, seeing how it was going to play out. Like I was, they had set it up, including in the segment itself. They were just going to have Kofi and Woods split, and they would go off and pursue their own things. But to have them, Kofi and Woods, as we said in the Raw recap, kind of find a common cause to rally against Big E.
Yeah.
I didn't see that happening.
Yeah.
And the more I think about it, the more it kind of signals, like, I don't think they would have done this, how they did it, if there was a chance in the near future that E could come back to wrestle. I mean, this, in a lot of respects, this feels like a pretty clear signal that he's not coming back, at least not anytime soon.
I agree with that. And I think the timing of his, what was it, the Players Tribune article, I think that as well. Kind of, I was thinking the same thing. Yeah, I think he's probably done. I do. Yeah, everything you said, I agree with. And if I'm not mistaken, leading into the Festival of Friendship, I'm pretty sure we figured it would be a turn.
Yeah,
like that was kind of obvious, right?
Yeah.
If I remember correctly. Because they were obviously teasing it along the way. Jericho's the guy who got Kevin Owens the Goldberg match, and we saw how that turned out. And so, like, we saw that coming. But I don't think anybody did. Like, this was shocking with when Kofi said, so you broke your neck, so what? It was like, oh, shit, they're both bad now? Man. And I mean, I know like leading up like weeks ago and even going back months because they've been teasing this for a while. There were people saying, oh, Kofi's going to turn on Woods instead of the other way, even though Woods was showing the heel tendencies. And instead for both of them to find common ground to bond over their anger at E's absence was really a masterstroke. And in this day and age, when you can still be clever enough to lob surprises at us, then that's the sweet spot. It really is. I mean, I've watched this segment twice, and I could easily go back and watch it again because the performances are that damn good.
Yeah.
And to that, I can say it's similar to the Festival of Friendship in that when you look at Jericho's reaction to finding out that it's the list of Kevin Owens, it's like, oh man, it's played really, really well. The performance is excellent there.
It is.
But I do think that the history, the surprise, like you mentioned, all those aspects of it, again, like I said, man, hard to top something like that. It takes, honestly, like, and I hate making this comparison, but because it's a different time. And so things were presented a little bit different. But when you go back and you watch, for example, the shock of Andre the Giant on that Piper's Pit segment, basically say, Hogan, I'm coming after you. And I can imagine, it was probably similar in terms of like, oh shit, I didn't think that they would have Andre go after Hogan. That's a kind of a big deal. That's pretty shocking stuff. And Piper's reaction and all that kind of stuff, him saying, oh, you're bleeding. Again, really great performance there. Not surprising that line came from Piper. If it was on the other foot, if Hogan did it, you're bleeding, brother.
Yeah, I know.
It would have been super ham-fisty, but Piper did it really, really undersold, and it was more effective that way. But
absolutely.
Yeah, I thought, we talked about it extensively on the Raw recap, the arm that Kofi, held Big E back with was so powerful. It was so powerful. And just, again, I mentioned during the recap, Big E not being able to participate in anything more physical than just being held back really punctuated it. It really just, it gnawed at you. It's like, man, if he had taken a bump, then it's like, oh, he can do that. He's going to come back. He's going to get these guys.
Yeah.
But it was just, he's just sort of withered away, which made it so much more powerful and so much more sad. So this was an all-timer. A little bit more time passed, I think we'll be able to more appropriately rank it.
Yeah, and I wonder too if in the event that E can come back, how our perceptions of this segment will change, if they will at all. If we'll see it through a completely different light if in 6 months' time, he's back in the ring.
Or I mean, that's a good point, because what happens next, even if he doesn't, and the New Day, if they aren't able to follow up in a way that's creatively satisfying for in some way, shape, or form. And these days I give WWE, hey, they've got a tall task ahead of them. And I think that they're up to this. I really do, because they've shown that they've been up to so many other tasks like this, where it's like, can they bring the creativity? And so you're right, though. The follow-up is a lot here. If they completely drop a turd, I think this segment will be tainted in that it's like, oh, imagine what could have been. And we won't have the same discussion about it.
Yeah. Another hot take here from the real TJP.
Real.
Says Big E getting kicked out of the New Day was the modern version of Evolution. So, the previous question, Festival of Friendship. I mean, there's countless team breakups that we can reference.
Yeah.
DIY, back in NXT. There's a lot of instances where factions or tag teams have broken up in dramatic and or heartbreaking ways. The thing about the Evolution one was they were all heels. It was essentially a babyface turn from Randy Orton.
I was gonna say that
like
they're all
getting kicked
assholes.
out of the heel faction. Yeah,
right. Yeah.
So
absolutely.
didn't quite. I mean, it was. I'm sure it was heartbreaking and devastating for Randy Orton's character.
It was a really great story beat. I remember I was watching at the time, and it was a wonderful story beat. And it was like, oh damn. Because, he was, the youngest champion, but Triple H loved that big gold belt.
Yeah, he did.
So he orchestrated the thumbs down thing. and then he got kicked out. Of course, they echoed that with Batista and Triple H. There you go. But yeah, no, the modern day Evolution. I mean, modern day Festival of Friendship. Yeah, whatever you want to call it. This is that for sure.
Atticus has a hot take.
Hot.
Big E is the biggest missed opportunity from Vince McMahon's reign. This guy could have easily been a John Cena level megastar.
Yeah, it's funny because like there are a lot of fumbled situations.
Oh yeah,
and characters. Big E really, really did have it all, though. I mean, if you want to go to the look, if you want to go to the charisma, the improvisation skills, this guy could have been Mr. Make-A-Wish. He could have been the next evolution of John Cena. I really believe that. And I think that the New Day as a group, 1,000% have an all-time career.
Oh yeah.
But taking how big of a deal they are and were, and not following through on what could have been a massive single star with Big E. Yeah, I mean, it seemed right there. And Vince, I don't honestly, like, I don't know what his philosophy was in terms of trying to keep, I've never known a situation where somebody can sort of keep one foot in and one foot out, when it comes to, because I think that the idea was, well, the New Day are big money generators. We're going to split them from Kofi and Xavier, but they're still kind of going to be New Day. Like the tag team's definitely going to be New Day. Big E, he never really said I'm not going to be New Day anymore. He's still dressed like New Day. Stuff like the biggest departure in a singles run was when he was wearing Seinfeld gear, which, look, I love Seinfeld. You love Seinfeld, and it's fun. But in terms of saying, hey, I'm my own man now, I think there was there was so many missed creative opportunities to do that.
Well, he had his own theme. He had his own Tron. We saw that on Raw. That was a departure from how the New Day presented themselves. But, I don't even necessarily, I've never really been of the opinion that Big E had to separate himself from New Day to be a massive single star. I think there was a way that they could have been a unit on the same show and Big E could have been the guy on that particular show. I was even going back a little bit further, prior to E's title win, even just as a whole, like when New Day was one of the most popular acts in all of WWE, why didn't they try to get them on SNL or something like that? Like they had crossover appeal. They were wildly charismatic, all of them hilarious. They could go in the ring. Like that's one aspect of it even before Kofi won the title. I'm talking like 2016, 2017, when they are arguably the as popular as they ever were. Like pushed them collectively as faces of the company. And then from there, you could, do the single success too. I've always thought that was an interesting concept they had, that we're a faction. We want to stay a faction. We want to pursue all our ambitions, but not have to turn on each other to do it. We could do it together, because that just doesn't happen very often in the world of wrestling, especially in WWE, where anytime there's a faction, anybody achieves any measure of single success, there's a turn involved generally.
Yeah, I mean, it's because one person's philosophy on how things are done was the prevailing one. But
yeah,
I don't know. I mean, you look at, and I don't know, you can debate as to whether or not this is a good example, but Triple H found a way to do it as the head of Evolution. Speaking of Evolution, where he was, the guy of the brand in terms of he was a heel, but it was a NWA way of doing things where baby faces would chase him and then he'd just get it back. But he did that while part of a dominant faction as well. Seemingly Vince was uninterested. And my thing is I try to keep when I look back on stuff like that, I try to keep within the realism that Vince McMahon was in charge. And yes, somebody maybe with a brighter mind, a more open mind, a different philosophy could have accomplished what you're talking about. Generally speaking, Vince was not interested in that, didn't know how to pull it off. So that's what we're stuck with. And within that context, there had been a ton of success with factions that were together. And then one guy or several people split off into do solo pursuits. And that was the way that success was had under that philosophy of Vince McMahon. You need the separation. I mean, again, going back to Triple H, him splitting from DX was because this dude was like, him and Vince felt, hey, I can be a huge solo guy, and he became a huge solo guy. And I think that they never applied that level of commitment to Big E as a solo guy under that philosophy is really surprising to me. Like, oh, he wanted to be, they wanted to keep, I mean, even I know you mentioned the Tron, but even the Tron was like visually, aesthetically speaking, still very much in keeping with New Day. Big E's presentation was still visually, aesthetically. If you look at Triple H and DX and Triple H the Game, they're two completely different people. And so that's what I'm surprised about. They never really, and on top of that, as we know, the creative was terrible. He kept on talking about, they used his cash in for a short-term ratings bump, and then they jobbed him out big time as a true secondary champion of Roman Reigns at Survivor Series. They never really committed to him at all. No. And that is an absolute shame, but I really feel with some decent, creative behind him, whether it's with the New Day, without the New Day, whatever. Yeah, I agree. I think Big E had everything. I think he really absolutely did. We just they never committed to it.
Nope, they didn't. Anyways, they did not.
Before we continue on with our other hot takes, man, we have a new sponsor this week for Going In Raw. So why don't we go ahead and talk about that, Larson?
Let's do it. Let's take a quick break here. Get a word from our sponsor, Aura Frames. Steve, so often I grab this phone of mine, I'm taking pictures. Yeah, sure. Whether these pictures are of huge events or just everyday moments, it just seems far too often these pictures just are stuck here on my phone's camera roll. And then when I want to share those photos with, say, my family, I got to spend all sorts of time scrolling and searching, looking for those photos so I can send them to my family.
Yeah, man. No, I feel that. But you know what? If you're looking for an easy way to share those pictures, check out Aura Frames. Aura makes it easy to upload unlimited photos directly from your phone so your favorite memories are always within view. As a lot of people know, I lost my wonderful companion, my dog, not that long ago. And one of the Aura Frames right here that I got, you can see her little baby face right there. Have it on all the time. And I've just uploaded, there's an app on the phone that you get. I put all the pictures of her that I'd taken over the years, and I upload it. It go straight to my phone. It's easy to use. If I can figure it out, believe me, you can too. And it just goes straight to the frame. The great thing also that I love about it is the two other things. Number one, the quality of the image is outstanding. I've seen other digital frames in the past, and it's like, I could just tell this is a bad whatever. These look absolutely amazing. And the other thing that I love about it is that you can even, and I don't know what like the limit is, but like you can upload video. And so I'll just roam by and like it'll have a still from the video and you can hit a little button on it and it'll play the video. And it's great. It's sound as well. So no, it's really, really cool. The other thing is you can personalize and preload an Aura frame, either filled with photos of life's huge milestones or pictures of fun everyday moments for an absolutely unforgettable gift.
So save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $35 off Aura's best-selling Carver mat frames by using promo code RAW at checkout. That's auraframes.com, promo code RAW. This deal is exclusive to listeners, so get yours now in time for the holidays. Terms and conditions apply.
All right, man, let's move on with these next batch of hot takes. Rhea Ripley's been sort of the center of discussion amongst certain internet wrestling communities. Lord Blake Whitehouse here echoes one of those sentiments, says, Rhea Ripley's been pushed so strong. Come on, Larson. Rhea Ripley's been pushed so strong.
How strong?
That it actually has hurt the women's division, and no one says anything about it because of how much people love her.
Well, then, Ignacio Padilla here has a similar take, says, hot take, Rhea Ripley has done more damage to the women's division than right. Her title reign was bad with no real story, never elevated any other woman, and the story with Liv has run its course a long time ago. Other women should be given a chance for the main title instead of her.
So I think one thing both of these friendos will acknowledge as well. It's not Rhea's fault how she's treated creatively, so this would be an issue with creative, not Rhea Ripley, the actual character or the performer behind the character.
Demi Bennett?
Maybe. Could be.
That's what her real name is?
Maybe you just gave her a brand new name. I don't know.
No, I'm pretty sure Demi is her first name.
All right. Well, in any event, it's not Demi's fault. But we understand the point.
Yeah, Demi Bennett.
From a story standpoint, do you think Rhea Ripley's been pushed so strong that it's hurt the women's division?
So I don't know if I don't think it's a situation where Rhea's being pushed so strong that it's hurt the rest of the women's division. I just think the rest of the creative in the women's division isn't up to the same level. If there was multiple interesting stories across the board in the women's division that would elevate more women in the women's division, I don't know if the disparity between the quality of storylines would be so vast.
You're kind of saying the same thing, though, right? Like they're focusing the idea is they're focusing their creative energies on one thing and ignoring the rest of it. I kind of feel like it's the same. That's kind of the same thing. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, well, then, yeah. I mean, okay. So yeah, I mean, there's the proof is in the pudding. It's exactly what you're saying. It's exactly what they're saying. I'll put it this way. I don't have a problem necessarily with Rhea being booked as a Superman level or a Superwoman level.
No, I don't think that's the issue. I don't think that's the issue. No,
I don't think it is either. We made fun of this thing about Rhea Ripley taking all these baseball bat shots, then still being able to finish the match with a riptide through a table. And I don't think that's the problem necessarily. I think the problem is, one problem is, how do you book realistic challengers when your hero it's the Superman problem?
It is.
Batman's a dude. That's why it's, and he's a guy with severe mental issues and emotional issues, and so you have all these, you have Scarecrow, you got friggin' Joker, you got Riddler, you got all these people who challenge various vulnerabilities of Batman.
Yeah.
Well, traditionally, Superman has been looked upon as a weaker character to write, with less iconic stories because he's so damn strong.
Yeah, he's kind of one-dimensional. Yeah.
Yeah. How do you deal? And the most effective Superman stories have been the ones that take a closer look at the Clark Kent character and how it relates to Superman. Well, with Rhea Ripley, she is booked so strong that maybe for creative, it's difficult for them to come up with, and I thought that they did the Liv stuff right to a point. Liv took everything from Rhea Ripley. And through a series of, I don't know if the injuries got in the way, because Rhea and Raquel were already supposed to have their match at the last pay-per-view, or the one before that, rather. And so maybe that's prolonged this longer than necessary. And I kind of like Liv Morgan as a character and her relationship with Raquel. Raquel doesn't do a whole lot, but I'm okay with that sort of traditional, cheaty chicken shit bad guy with the heater. I'm okay with that because she's won some matches. She beat Nia Jax at the Crown Jewel thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's the story, and I don't know how much of the story, but yeah, there has been a lack of attention focused on the rest of the Raw Women's division.
Yeah. Yeah.
That can't be disputed, I don't think.
No.
But, I don't think it has to do with Rhea being, booked super strong, but I can understand why that would present challenges.
Yeah, if you compare Rhea's character, especially now that she's a babyface, to say like Gunther when Gunther was Intercontinental Champion. Unbeatable. Gunther was. Until hubris took over. He bought into the fact that he was unbeatable, and therein lied his weakness. Hubris.
Yeah.
Even the most dominant of wrestlers should have some weakness that can be exploited by their opponents. And I guess, for a while, when Judgment Day, the original iteration, was still together, you can make the case that Rhea's weakness was Dom. Her relationship to Dom.
Absolutely.
That was the way you could get at her. Now that she's on her own, what is her weakness?
She has no vulnerabilities, and
there needs to be vulnerability for your babyface, for your heroes, so you can write interesting stories for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And so they need to find that, whatever that is. I mean, right now it's the fact that she's recovering from a broken orbital bone. That's her weakness. But something that's intrinsic to her character, they got to find.
Yeah.
Because not only is that something that her opponents could try to use for their own advantage, but that's a story for her about something that she has to overcome then.
If they had, at the very least, tried to add some dimension to her breakup with Dom, if Dom had come to her in private and said, deep down, I feel terrible about this. I really do. But, XYZ. People are complicated. They do things that they might not, feel good about. And if she felt some amount, and even if it was manipulation on his part.
Yeah.
If she, feels that manipulation, if that tears her up a little bit, if that makes her hesitant to pull the trigger on whatever, as opposed to her simply being an arm of revenge.
Yeah.
A destructive force that will stop at nothing to get, it's not terribly human. It's like there are layers to this. There's complexities to that type of thing. I mean, I love how complex her relationship with Dom in the first place was. It was never spelled out really what it was. I just spat on myself. So yeah, I think there was a lot of stuff that was sort of left on the table. And again, who knows how much the injuries had to do with, plans or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah. And, you like to hope that maybe EO being in a high profile situation where she has this matchup at Saturday night's main event, between that and the Intercontinental Championship tournament, there will be more stories and more ways to build people to the title stuff, I guess.
Yeah.
You know, but once Rhea gets the title back, assuming that happens, you know, I mean, to be honest with you, I kind of would prefer her like get detoured from the title a little bit more with some other feuds with other people. But again, who's been built in the meantime?
Yeah, I know. Because you know, if you look back on the last month and a half for Raw, take this week's kind of out of the equation because it was obvious a bit of a reset in terms of, hey, we're gonna start kickstarting some stories heading into Mania season. But prior to this week's edition of Raw, the most interesting storylines on Raw probably were in the men's mid card. It was the Karrion Kross, Wyatt Six stuff, and the New Day.
Absolutely.
That was no titles involved.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's impossible to tell and develop stories that don't involve titles. You just got to put the effort into it.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
And I mean, it's as simple as that. If they don't put the effort into developing more interesting creative across the board for the women's division, then this is going to be the case.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, they're doing a decent job of it on SmackDown. It's a little convoluted, but they're making efforts to build people up and tell stories that cross over. And they're just not doing that on Raw.
No, there's a lot going on there. Dude, even I got a perfect idea. You do this. Dakota Kai just won that Intercontinental Championship contender match thing, the tournament match.
Oh,
right?
I thought you were looking into the future. Say Dakota Kai just won the Intercontinental title.
No, but she just won that match, right?
Yeah.
And Shayna Baszler is the person who sort of got, you know, Shayna Baszler could make the case, oh man, I was dominating this thing and then I just sort of got shoved aside and then I was gone. It was it, right? It was done. So she might have beef with Dakota Kai at this point. What if you do a backstage segment where Dakota Kai is telling Rhea Ripley, hey, I know what it's like to come back from an injury. You need to be careful. You need to not be so reckless because look what happened last week, right? Well, there's an avenue to get Shayna in a feud with Rhea. And that would be amazing because Shayna's known as tough as nails. You know, she can take what Rhea Ripley can dole out. Shayna's long overdue for an actual proper feud. And then you basically Drew CM Punk that. You know what I mean? Like, give us a 3-month, 3-match, brutal stuff, no DQ type stuff between Shayna and Rhea Ripley. And there you go. You can keep her away from the title from that. And then you can bring in the other members of Pure Fusion Collective into that. Or whomever else.
You just said it right.
Try it 100 times, you're going to get one right. You know, that was an accident, a slip.
Oh.
Next hot take, please.
Hot take. Darius the Great here says, the OG Bloodline should not be a thing after War Games. I was glad to see Jay back in his pink yeet shirt. But seeing Sammy still in Bloodline gear made me cringe. Yeah, it was. I don't understand why Sammy'd still be rocking Bloodline gear. Roman and Jay or Jimmy are on the other show.
Dude, no, come on. Sammy wearing that makes total sense. This dude can't shut. Jay is there for family. Jimmy's there for family. Sammy is the biggest OG Bloodline fan. It makes all the sense in the world for him to be wearing it. He didn't show up reluctantly. He was like, oh man, feeling, Roman. That feeling. Nobody else is talking about the feeling.
No, I get it. I don't disagree with the take about here that it's kind of cringy as hell, but I agree. That's the point. It's supposed to be kind of cringe.
He's a dork. Yes.
Yeah. He's a dork for the OG Bloodline.
Yeah, exactly. That makes sense. That being said, I agree with this because you do that for War Games and shit, I don't even know what's coming up now. I guess what's Roman doing? Oh, Roman and the Ulafala. That's what's next.
It'd be Roman to solo, but he doesn't need the rest of Bloodline to get involved, but they might simply because numbers game.
Well, that's the thing. How does Roman approach that? Because I agree with this. Jay should be like, hey, I'm going back to being main event. I helped him out. We did our thing. Yeet, right?
Yeet.
And Sammy should want to also. I like that he still wears the shirt though, because he's a nerd. But yeah, at that point, it's like, hey, Roman's taking on Solo for the Ulafala. If Jimmy shows up, Roman's taking on Solo for the Ulafala. Can we count on you guys to be around in case the numbers game becomes a thing? Well, why are we going to help him with that? What, Roman with the Ulafala again? That's a nightmare situation. There's a story to be told as to why they might remain a thing, but they shouldn't just remain a thing to remain a thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And part of that part of them remaining a thing should involve the evolution of Roman's character. So he does change.
And I love that they're bringing up the fact that he hasn't changed.
Yes.
Seth pointing that out. I love that they brought that up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of trauma that's coming out of this, or there's a lot of opening up about trauma that's coming out of this, and I like it.
Yeah. Christian Ramirez with hot take says Solo is a more interesting overall character and tribal chief than Roman right now.
I would agree with this if we'd see more of Solo backstage interacting with the damn Bloodline. I would love to see that, but he's a funnier character than Roman.
He is right now. Speaking of hubris.
Yeah.
Hubris-filled Solo is wildly entertaining. Yeah,
his impersonations are so low-key, they make me laugh so much.
They're funny. You know what? But I think we're going to see some more dimensions to Roman if and when they decide that, all right, we got to... He has to make the realization that to be an effective leader, he can't be a manipulative piece of shit.
Which we still saw at War Games, by the way.
Exactly. He needs to actually inspire people. Mm-hmm. We need to see that journey for him.
Well, do you think that it was a conscious decision to maybe begin that type of journey at War Games? You see how he was treating Punk originally, and then Heyman has to come in and say, hey, you guys all need to work together. And in the end, him and Punk shake hands. Do you think that could be one step towards him understanding?
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure it's all a conscious thing, because if he shows back up, I've learned my lesson after losing the title, I'm a changed man. Well, that feels a little shallow. That feels kind of, those are hollow words. We need to see that journey. Otherwise, it's you told us, but you need to show us that journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, and I'm sure every time he nods to other members of the Bloodline to follow him, they're going to register that. Mm-hmm. They were there to accomplish their goal. They did that. They were unified in accomplishing that. But now that that's out of the way, Roman can't just demand their loyalty anymore, because there's not a shared goal they have. Now everything's Roman is fighting for is for himself. And so if he wants people to have his back, he can't treat them like shit.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the funny thing is, I think that getting back to the actual take here, I think the ingredients for Solo to be a more interesting character are definitely there, because I think his story is really interesting.
Yeah.
But I just don't think that they've explored it nearly enough for me to agree with this.
I wonder too if and when Solo's iteration of the Bloodline starts to fall apart around him after he loses Ulafala, whether it's immediately or sometime in the not too distant future, we're going to get more layers there as well. Like, is Jacob Fatu going to make a play to take over? Mm-hmm. Bad Bloodline?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I think, things will kick into gear, yeah.
So, hot takes. This is a long one. This one's going to be interesting. Coyote Dynamic here says the Death Rider storyline is great.
Oh, wow.
It only gets hate because it's an AEW, and hating AEW online is the thing to do. Moxley's cutting great promos. Claudio's booked like a monster. Yuta finally getting storylines to shine. The group is booked to feel dangerous with someone being taken out every time they arrive. It's very simple. If you hate this, I will gladly stop listening to you, because you're clearly just being tribalistic by that point.
Is he talking to us or just people in general?
I don't know.
I think he's talking about people with their takes. He doesn't talk about
I guess so.
So first off, I think I speak for both of us when I say we don't hate this.
No, and I don't think we share any opinions that we share come from the vantage point of any sort of tribalism, because I don't think we're loyal to a company. We want good stories and good wrestling. That's what we're loyal to, is good wrestling television, regardless of the company. Yeah.
I don't think he's talking about us. Number one, I love that he loves it. Because I would always say, hey, if something's really clicking with you, then who gives a shit what anybody else says?
Totally.
Is hating AEW online the in thing to do right now?
It's kind of been from certain portions of wrestling internet, absolutely, and has been for a while.
Yeah.
It's not a new kind of thing where there's people whether earnestly or disingenuously, will just blast everything that AEW does.
Yeah, right.
I personally really want to like AEW's television.
Mm-hmm.
I'm much happier when all wrestling television is good wrestling television.
Yeah.
For a variety of reasons we've talked about ad nauseum, so I don't know if we need to belabor the point here further. There's aspects of the story that personally for me just is not working. That's my take. That's my opinion.
Did you watch Dynamite on Wednesday?
I have not watched it yet, no.
Neither did I. That being said, I will say this. At Full Gear, them having opened up the Death Riders story.
So apparently, here, I did see this, that Hangman has set his sights on the title again.
Yeah.
And so that's good.
It is, because it seemed like, I will take issue with this, Mox is not cutting great promos. Mox is cutting very Mox promos. And if you like his promos, then I'm sure they're great. I tend to think that they're a bit on the one note side, but that's whatever. I do like how they book Claudio. Mm-hmm. And I do like the subtleties of what they're doing with Yuta.
I mean, he's pretty much inhabiting Bryan Danielson at this point.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
He's doing his poses. He's doing his moves. Yeah.
My main issue with it was it seemed too narrow in its scope. And now that they've widened out a little bit, I'm hoping that, okay, now we'll pick up steam a little bit. If we have called this, and this is merely a way to get the title on Darby, I'm trying to divorce myself of that just to see where it goes. You know, just to be like, just to keep an open mind and be like, okay, let's see where this goes. I'm hoping that this isn't just like, okay, we're doing all this just to get to Darby, just to get the title on Darby, unless they can really show me that, oh, this makes a ton of sense.
So here's the thing about Darby winning the title is that it will be like a short-term thing for people who really like Darby. Yes, Darby's champion. I don't like my main issue with this storyline. It doesn't feel like the sea change, the monumental thing that I think it's meant to be. And part of that is that it's very narrow in scope. And I don't feel like, especially in the case of Daniel Garcia, there's been enough bumps in the road for him to get where he wants to be. But if the end game of all this is to have Hangman Adam Page be, you know, essentially the savior of AEW, rescuing AEW from the clutches of the Death Riders, when all he cares about is keeping that title off Swerve, that's interesting stuff.
I know.
That's a good story.
And I guess that's sort of my point is I haven't been too enamored with it, but I am willing to give it a shot because I think there are possibilities.
Yeah.
So I'm trying not to lock it down to, well, if the idea is just this or if the idea is just that. I'm more like, okay, well, cool. They opened it up, so they're not narrowly focusing on stuff anymore. So, and you know, Mox is he's never been the most compelling guy for me, and so having him at the head of this is not as interesting as if maybe it was somebody else. I don't know who, Swerve or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. Look, I think you're right. I think that people just like to hate on AEW. Yeah. And I honestly though, here's the thing. Here's the flip side of that. It's, I think, largely because AEW has dropped more balls than they've run with. Mm-hmm. So it's especially a natural,
especially the last 2 years. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a natural thing. You know, I think that if they scored more touchdowns, to continue the analogy, the metaphor, if they had scored more touchdowns, their ratings wouldn't be plummeting. If they scored more touchdowns, guess what? Their attendance would be up. You know, I don't think this is they're doing a killer job. Well, no, they're not. They haven't been for a while. And so I think that's one of the main reasons why they get hate. If they all of a sudden were telling really compelling stories and doing awesome shit along with all the really good wrestling that they have to offer, which is legitimate, if they were killing it, creatively speaking, which is where pro wrestling, that's where the good shit is. That's why people tune in.
Yep.
Then people would tune in more and they would stop dropping like flies.
Yep.
So, you know, I think that to say that, oh, it's the cool thing to do. Yeah, people do that. People like to, people love to pile on, But it's not as if there isn't real, actual criticism that is the basis for that.
Yeah. Yeah. Hot take from This Is Nate. Says Triple H is Triple H is better at booking mid-card titles than world titles. Oh, I don't know.
I don't know about that. The Intercontinental Championship? I mean, it's just sort of like the match title, you know? It's like you can put it on Braun Breakers, some cool matches, but there's not like tons of story there. U.S. title,
I wonder
not
if,
tons of story.
No, I wonder if this is just a hot take here because neither of the world, although, I mean, I like what they're doing with Kevin Owens. Prior to that, neither of the world title programs were necessarily the most interesting.
Well, I'll put it this way. I think he swings bigger for the world title stuff. You know, you're not going to hit everything.
No.
But like turning Gunther into Crisis of Confidence guy, I mean, that's a choice. It's like, hey, let's try this with him. I think they're trying to face him up, to be honest with you. As opposed to Braun Breaker as a title, here's some good guys who are match guys. Let's go ahead and put him in a triple threat. And then after that, somebody else will challenge him. And then after that, somebody else will probably challenge him.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of stories going on with the mid-card titles, and that's okay. There's good personalities there, but I don't think that there is the ambition that he has with the world title stuff.
I mean, honestly, some of the more ambitious stuff is in the mid-card on Raw. I just mentioned it, the New Day stuff, the Final Testament stuff.
It's away from title. It's non-title
Exactly. That's
stuff.
my point.
Yeah.
Is I think some of the mid-card non-title stuff is actually more ambitious than anything he's doing with any of the title programs, whether the world titles or mid-card titles.
I really, you got to wonder, like, whoever is, because, they got like a giant fucking squad of writers.
Oh, they got like 30, 40 people on staff. Yeah, I'm sure.
And I don't know what writers are writing what or whatever, or what the process is. But whoever is doing the non-title mid-card stuff on Raw, they should get a promotion at some point. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like they're really making a good case for themselves.
I mean, if you kind of go beyond those two stories mentioned, like the Punk Drew stuff, that was a upper mid-card feud, no titles involved, except for Drew was champion for 5 minutes. Title pursuits were a part of the story, but the feud itself was not involving a title.
True. Yeah.
I mean, at this point, the Bloodline story, no titles involved.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So you can easily make the case that a lot of the stories outside of the title picture are more interesting than the title pictures themselves.
Triple H is better at booking non-title stuff than title stuff.
Because if you book a compelling story not involving titles, there's got to be good personal stuff to work with, as opposed to I want that,
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is what a lot of title feuds are. I want that.
I want that.
I want belt.
Yeah.
I mean, I get it. This is supposed to be a competitive thing. It's just not the most compelling from a story perspective.
Oh my gosh. Let's move on to this next one, man. This is from Timor. It says, prior to the U.S. title win against LA Knight, I still thought Shinsuke was being used correctly by WWE as a guy who's in feuds with top guys and losing to them to make them look strong. He's in his mid-40s, and he's not the wrestler he once was, and they package him very well, but I don't think he'll be the top guy people want him to be. And let's not act like they're wasting him. He did main event a couple PLEs last year.
So the issue with this is if he is only used as the dude who feuds with top guys and loses.
Yeah.
It's eventually the whatever benefits there are to being Nakamura will gradually fade to nothingness, because at that point he is simply a guy who loses to top guys, and anytime he's in a feud with a top guy, you know he's going to lose.
Yeah, also he was gone for a really long time.
He was gone for a really long time.
When he was around, he would lose, I think.
Yeah, he lost all the matches with Seth, lost all the matches to Cody.
In order for you to make somebody else look good, you have to have a decent recent short-term resume. It's like you got to have some wins, some quality wins.
Yes, quality wins.
For me to think, oh, this guy has a chance. Like,
yeah.
I don't think Owens has much of a chance as of late. That being said, boy, they're using him really well, Kevin Owens. Because it's like, this is all really interesting stuff. It's not just he's showing up to lose to Cody. It's he's showing up and showing us a lot of interesting character stuff to lose to Cody, but we're being entertained along the way.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that Shinsuke is lacking all that stuff.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, without a doubt.
His presentation's always been great, though.
Yeah. That's one thing they've always got right with Nakamura is his presentation.
Yeah.
Well, maybe not. Sure, remember they were calling him the artist. They
Oh
didn't
yeah,
want to
when
do
he was
King
with
of
the
Strong
artist
Style stuff.
collection. Yeah, that wasn't good.
Yeah, that was maybe not that great, but
All right.
for the most part.
All right, man. This last one, Diehard Homer says Kazuchika Okada is still Kazuchika Okada, but his alliance with the Elite did nothing for him. When he comes out now, he just feels like a guy and not who he should be. Ospreay has done a lot more meaningful work in his tenure in AEW. So that last sentence, I don't know how anybody could disagree with that, because that's totally
yes,
true.
I mean, I would agree with that last sentence.
And the first one I'd agree with too. His alliance with the Elite did nothing. Well, yeah, ultimately it did nothing for him.
No, I mean, it's possible to enjoy the work he has done while also realizing that it's not maybe
Propelling him forward anywhere.
compelling and substantial enough for someone of his reputation and skill set.
Yeah.
He's rarely on TV. He's not involved currently in anything major. I mean, he's going to be a featured, obviously he's Continental Champion. He's going to be a featured aspect of the Continental Classic. He might even win it again, and it might kickstart something if they want to really establish him as they said before the tournament started, the greatest tournament wrestler of all time. He wins the Continental Classic to retain the title, and then they got something substantial for him. Awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, when you bring in Okada, you should instantly position him as one of the top people in your company, because that's what he is. He is one of the best wrestlers in the entire world, and he's just not positioned that way. He's wildly entertaining.
Yeah, he is.
I've loved the character stuff, but there hasn't been enough focus on finding the sweet spot between doing what he does as a character while retaining what made the Rainmaker great.
Yeah.
It seems like they just fall back too often on him calling people bitch. And that's
he hasn't been in any stories. I mean, that's the main thing. You can have this character the way he is and the wrestler as the way he is and put him into some fucking stories. And this, I don't know what it is with them, but this whole, the Young Bucks, they show up, they're doing the Succession thing. And what is it for? They do the thing with Tony Khan.
They want to do the Death Riders thing, because Tony wanted to do the Death Riders thing instead.
Yeah. So he took that Meltzer driver for absolutely no reason.
Well, so he can have the neck brace when they were doing the draft and get publicity for it.
That's so dumb. Where's the fucking reason? Where's the story for that? That's silliness.
It seemed like it was a concept more than a plan.
Yeah, man. Yep. You need a plan.
You need an actual plan with an endpoint.
Yeah.
Without that, it fizzles out like that did.
Yep. You got that right. Anyways, that's going to do it for the show today. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We appreciate it. Do us a solid. Leave us a comment, rating, or review. Hit that thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button, notify bell. I think I covered them all. Whether you're on YouTube or if you're listening to us in the audio space, do one of those things, and it helps the show. So till next time, we'll see you guys around.
Goodbye.